Hello, everyone. I'm here with Justin Dunn. This is one of Sean Dunn's older brothers. Some in the audience know Sean Dunn. He's a good friend of mine. This is someone who he's always done his own thing, and to be honest, he's been a mentor to me in many respects this past decade since I've known him. Actually, the first bong I ever saw, me and Sean were messing around in Justin's room. I don't think you ever knew about this, Justin. I saw it, and I was so scared, and I was all gassed up on the DARE program. I was like, oh my God, he's a drug addict. I was very startled when I saw that. I just had this, it was green, it was a little bubbler. I don't know if you remember that, Justin. But I like having people on the show that are different. I had Clark on the show. I'm having Justin on now, and they have a different perspective, and I like riffing with people like that. And as Justin said the other day, Dunn boys were not built for the 9-to-5 office bullshit, and that's why I'm having him on.
True story.
True story, baby. Poker is his day job, and because of that, he has an interesting view of money. He uses it as a tool and is detached from it. We'll talk more about that. Dude, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing pretty good, Rich. How's it going?
It's going well, brother. Thanks for stopping by. We're currently in my office in Oakland. He is coming up from LA. He's stopping by, going to stay a couple nights. My place. Then he's headed up to Humboldt, where he lives.
It's a good drive.
It's a good drive. You do it all the time.
All the time.
All the time, baby. Talk to me, brother. Poker. So now poker is something that you've done for a while. You've never gone all in on it until fairly recently. But the past 5 years, remember you do these kind of small time tournaments, and I would hear about them, and you would we used to play in Mammoth. That was the first time we would play
home games. Home games for the last 8 to 10 years.
Is that what you call them? You call them home games.
Home games, just with friends,
I love terminology like that. Home games. I've never heard that. I had another guy on talks about golf. He used the term range rat. Someone that just goes in the range and just does the same shot over and over and tries to practice. So I like that home game. So how did it go from home games to now? Hell, it's your job now. Let's call it what it is.
Well, it all started when I was in going to HSU up in Humboldt State University.
Absolutely.
And it was coming to an end. I had about a year left. Yes. And I was majoring in environmental science, climate and energy emphasis.
There we go.
And I realized that I didn't want to go down in that field, working for the government, right, or even a private company for that matter. I wanted to do something for myself.
Right.
I wanted to become an entrepreneur, actually. So I joined the entrepreneur club, looked out how to start my own business.
Yep.
Tried working actually with a neighborhood back down in LA. Our neighborhood started a jerky company called Topanga's Finest.
I remember you calling me up and tell me about that. You're like, dude, I got this jerky. I'm trying to move it. I'm trying to move about 2 kilos of it. Can you help me?
Oh, yeah. So I took a bunch of jerky up to Humboldt with me.
Right.
Tried selling it to stores, having them hold it. And the biggest barrier to entry was the shipping. And we just couldn't compete with, the big box jerky companies.
Totally.
So yeah, that kind of just faded out eventually.
Faded out. Okay, that's what happened.
So I went to other stuff, like trying to sell stuff on eBay or trying to, make my own brand for weed grinders or pipes, all kinds of stuff going on in my head.
Right.
And then
what's that? You still have that Instagram? Do you keep it up to date, or is that?
No, that's just faded.
It's faded, right on. Okay, right on.
Literally faded. But,
right.
Yeah, then I got into the whole weed thing, I started working with people. I started actually delivering weed for a dispensary.
Right.
I was trying to work my way up so I could be either the head of that or the head of the branch in Humboldt, or start my own delivery company up there. Problem with that is that all the supplies up there, not all the demand is down here. And
right.
in LA.
Well, so for those that don't know, so Humboldt, I don't really hear about it that much. I visited you, I think, once. But give us the rundown. Tell us about Humboldt.
It's the Green Triangle. I mean, it's part of the Green Triangle at least.
What is that?
Basically, from my guess, everybody from the 60s moved up there, just started growing pot and making a living for themselves, you know, kind of living off the land, becoming farmers.
Right.
And, yeah, now pot has exploded, and Humboldt was basically the supply of all the medicinal marijuana for all Southern California. Up until recently, now that it's becoming legal, I think Humboldt's going to be squeezed, and
Really?
they're not going to be able to compete. They're just, you know, they're not capitalists up there.
They're not capitalists. They're hippies from the 60s that just wanted to work the land, make an honest
Exactly.
living, growing a Schedule I drug.
Exactly.
Right on. Okay, so
So I got into that.
Right.
So I started working with people, working on farms, trying to learn as much. I actually signed up for an online college, per se. You know,
right.
Graduated from that college, just learning everything I could about growing weed.
Wait, so you graduated from that college, but you didn't graduate from Humboldt?
Yeah, because I actually wanted to do this.
Right.
But yeah, I took that knowledge and I applied it to other people's grows and trying to formulate a way and try to start a company.
Right.
Meanwhile, I went to the casino for the first time, I think around this time.
So what year was this? Just put it in perspective for us.
I'd say like 2012, 2013. I don't know. It's probably
okay.
2012.
Right on.
And, you know, I've always wanted to be a poker player. Actually, during the poker boom, before the Black Friday hit, which is a whole thing in itself, basically the end of online poker.
So let's walk us through that, because that's pretty epic. You were boots on the ground during this time?
Yeah, I was in high school. Actually, I was right out of high school / right out of high school, going to junior college,
right.
And I was playing poker online. And I was thinking, like, hey, I could probably make a living doing this, because I was making like $20 an hour in sit and goes, which is basically a one table tournament.
Right.
So I was doing that, and I was actually making some money. And then this one night, I remember that I had this English paper due the next day, and this was supposed to be like, you know, the project of like the semester, and I hadn't done any of it.
Naturally.
Yeah. And so I basically just went full degenerate and played poker instead, and just played the highest stakes I could, and basically blew my whole bankroll in one night.
So when you say blew your whole bankroll, you mean you lost a lot of money?
I lost pretty much at least half my account.
Right.
And then I tried to get it back the following weeks, and ended up just busting, going to zero.
Right.
So that was my attempt on online poker, and then that was on Full Tilt Poker,
Yep.
pretty big poker site, and they actually got busted for laundering money, holding money, not having money that they say that were in players' accounts,
right.
that wasn't actually there,
Right.
and they were paying themselves hundreds of millions of dollars. People like Howard Lederer, who was a famous poker player at the time on TV and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, Black Friday hit, and they basically banned online poker in the U.S.
Damn.
And so there goes that whole.
And when was this? This must have been.
I think Black Friday.
It's like
was
2010.
I don't want to say the wrong date, honestly.
Okay, but a bunch of
probably around there.
A bunch of online poker operations were shut down.
Yeah, Poker Stars was shut down. Full Tilt Poker, Party Poker, all those sites were shut down.
Damn. So that's known in the poker community as Black Friday.
Yeah.
People know
that. Yeah, not the shopping holiday that
right.
everyone else knows it as. Black
Right.
Friday in the poker community is like the death of online poker and poker in the U.S.
Damn.
And yeah, that was the end of poker at that time. And then during this time of searching for, fast forward when I'm in Humboldt, searching for an entrepreneurial
right.
Career, I started playing poker at the local casino.
Yes.
and I realized how much money was in it, and I actually started winning, at first.
Right.
And I'm like, hey, like, I could do this on a regular basis.
And this is while you're still attending HSU.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. And I didn't do it that frequently. I did it here and there.
Right.
And I was, trying to save up from, I was actually doing some yard work, for the local community, just going door to door, posting on Craigslist.
So yard work in Humboldt, is that growing weed, or is that?
No, just literally
right.
like picking blackberry or weeding blackberry bushes, which is the worst job ever.
Right.
Blackberry
bushes have thorns, no?
Oh, yeah.
Damn.
And they grow in vines just underneath the ground. You have to dig them out and all that stuff.
Okay, right on.
So I was saving up, doing that, going to the local casino, which is Blue Lake Casino in Humboldt.
Okay.
And, I just...
So that's what planted the seed for you.
That's what planted the seed.
Right.
Didn't start right away.
Right.
But yeah, the entrepreneur thing kind of fizzled out. I decided to stop going to HSU because I was like, the pressures, I got to put pressure on myself to actually do this because...
To actually do what? Make poker happen?
No, just to be on my own. And if I wasn't planning on getting a career with an employer,
right,
then a resume wasn't necessary. And if a resume wasn't necessary, then a college degree, in my eyes, wasn't necessary.
I love that. How far away were you from graduating?
Year and a half, depending on how many credits I took.
I feel like you were a year and a half away.
I was a year and a half for like 3 years.
I was going to say.
Yeah.
Every time I come back home for Christmas, Jay, dude, where we at, brother? Yeah, about a year and a half. I was like, damn.
Yeah, that was just the,
right,
the answer I would.
Okay, well.
Even when I was out of college, I would still tell people that.
Right. What do you tell people now? Like your parents' friends?
I'd say I usually tell like relatives and stuff like, oh, I'm mainly a farmer because I still do that once in a while.
Right.
And I play poker too. But I'm beginning to say just straight poker player. Right. Just recently to my parents, I was like, look, I'm going full blown into poker, and that's what I'm going to do.
Right.
So, yeah.
So how's that going for you, going full blown into poker?
Well, recently it's been good. I feel like my skill level has just really taken some leaps and bounds. I played down here in LA, which the last, 4 or 5 times, I've come back a losing player.
Yep. Just
because of the change compared to Blue Lake, the skill level, the amount of money, the players.
Depending on the casino, depending on the geographical area, is there a palpable different play style?
Yeah. LA, San Francisco, big cities.
Right. Fast and loose.
There's a lot more bluffers.
Okay.
There's people that have money that they just don't care about. They have that in Humboldt too, like the growers.
Sure.
The dumb money, but there's a lot of ego down here. Right. Down here in San Francisco, the Matrix Casino in San Jose, in LA, the Commerce and the Bicycle Casino. Right. That's the 2 casinos that I usually play at.
Totally.
Or the card rooms.
That's so fascinating to me, though. The way a city plays poker tells you a lot about what the type of people that live there.
Yeah. Like for instance, San Jose, there's a lot of Asians. I'm just going to say it straight out.
Sure.
There's like 80% Asians in the Matrix Casino.
Right.
And not to be stereotypical, but they're mathematical.
Right.
And they do math quicker than, they act very quickly.
Right.
They don't really go off emotional tells as much.
Right.
And they just play very fast. So they'll catch you off guard.
When you say fast, do you mean poker doesn't have a clock. There's no watch. So how does that, what do you mean by fast?
Just the amount of time you take to act.
Okay.
You can call a clock on someone if you feel they've had enough time. I've never ever called a clock on anybody.
Right.
Because I just give them all the time they need.
Right.
And I prefer they do the same for me.
Right.
But there's times where it's like, okay, you've taken like 5 minutes to make a decision, or the decision doesn't seem like it's that big of a decision.
Right.
So, people will call the clock on you, and then you have typically 1 minute to act from when they call the clock. And then the pit boss will be called over and do a countdown.
Oh, really? So the dealer doesn't handle that?
No.
Interesting.
Typically, no.
Okay, interesting.
But every casino is different, so, yeah.
Totally. So, and I know you mentioned this before we were talking. You said one of these professional poker players said areas near a beach tend to have bad poker players. They're just not as good.
Yeah, I think has to do with just being inside more. You know, during the winters, winter is the poker season.
Right.
Everybody's inside for a longer period of time, and they want to do something, and that's poker. When you're outside on the beaches, you know, you don't got time to play cards. You're out there enjoying the sun and the water and whatnot.
Right.
So those players just don't have as much experience.
Right. Totally. What's your routine? In terms of, you know, some of us have a 9 to 5. You show up to work at, 6 o'clock at night?
6 o'clock. I mean, that's just based on the Blue Lake schedule.
Okay.
Blue Lake Casino. And it starts at 6 and it ends whenever the game breaks, or at 6 o'clock is the hard ending.
6 a.m.
6 a.m.
Right.
And 4 o'clock is a soft ending if it's 4-handed or less. Typically 5-handed or less.
5-handed meaning?
Meaning there's 9 players typically.
Right.
No limit hold'em. And if people start leaving and it drops to like 5 or 4 players, then they'll end it at 4 o'clock.
Got it. But if there's more than that, you can go.
Yeah, they'll go all the way to 6.
Right on. How many of your games go that late?
It depends. Like I said, during the winter, they typically go longer. They'll go to average probably 3 or 4.
Right.
And then of course, like when it's a juicy game, which means, you know, there's a lot of chips on the table, a lot of money out there.
Right.
Either good, bad players. You know, the worse players there are, the more people are willing to stay to try to, you know, get a chance at their money, so it'll last longer.
Right. They'll just dig a hole. So how has your relationship to money changed since you started going in all in on poker? Because you're playing with, you're not only are you earning money as you're living playing poker, right? But also money is every single second of the poker game. That's what you're playing with. It's a part of the job.
Yeah.
So you mentioned to me that when you start keeping track of how much money you make and stuff like that, you start to let it get.
Yeah, I had a problem with that in the beginning for sure.
Right.
Even up until recently, keeping track of how much I was making was putting a lot of pressure on the chip count at the time. So I was just either becoming too conservative, or I was putting too much risk to try to catch up so that my stats would look better on the week if I was keeping track of the week on how much I was earning.
Right.
And then every time I had a system and I would stick to the system, I would get caught up in that. And so right when I drop the system and I just play my game and focus on individual hands and the flow of the game itself and not worry about the money, that's when I played the best.
So your system is you have no system.
Yeah, as far as keeping track of the money. Right now, I do just the simplest way of keeping track of how much I made which day. And that's all I do. I just write down how much I made or how much I lost. That's all I do, and I try not to look at that as a whole. I just try to keep that track so, you know, at the end of the month or whenever, I can look back on it and actually look at, you know, some patterns going on, which days I'm losing what and this and that.
Well, you also do it for tax purposes, of course.
Yeah.
Let's not forget about the taxes, brother.
Yeah.
There we go.
But basically my attachment to money is basically almost negligible compared to other people's.
You can't be attached to it.
Like, you just can't be attached at all.
Right.
Like, you have to be willing to throw $600-800 out on one hand and not care if you win or lose.
Right.
Like, you want to win, obviously, but you got to care more about the hand itself, the play itself, who you're playing against, what setting, what's your history with this person, what their emotions are, what your emotions are,
Right.
all these things, as opposed to, oh, what can I buy with this $800?
Right. So you mentioned your history with these people. Going to the Blue Lake Casino frequently, you see the same crowd frequently,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So you learn the different play styles. Can you talk a little about that?
There's aggressive people. There's conservative people, which they call tight players. Don't play a lot of hands. Just wait for the nuts, they call it, the best hand possible. Aces, kings, queens.
Okay, so if they wait for the nuts, though, then you know they got something when they actually go in, right?
Exactly.
Right.
And so these people you can easily set up to bluff in spots where you know they have aces and the flush gets there. And they're such a tight player that they're willing to fold their aces if you represent the flush, for
Right.
instance. But then there's some people that get attached to their aces. And so unless you wait till you do have the flush in order to get max value out of them. So you kind of learn, every player is different in a different scale of being loose, aggressive, or tight, nitty, which just means very passive and conservative.
Right.
And the whole thing is just to navigate through these people and try to, either pin people against each other or just sit back and let them make the mistakes.
Pin people against each other. How do you do that? With words or with your play?
You could do it with words, but I'm typically talking about play in the sense that, say, there's an aggressive player
Right.
that is overbetting his hand. Say he has a pair of tens, like a one pair hand.
Right.
And he bets big. He gets the other people that that have good hands, but they're nitty or tight,
Right.
and they're just scared players, so they'll fold.
Right.
And so you let him scare them out, and then you come in with a slightly better hand than him.
Right.
And then so you're pinning him against them, and then you come in for the kill at the end.
Right.
So you could do all kinds of stuff like that. But
what's your play style, brother?
I like to think I adjust a lot, but
Right.
I'd say I'm definitely aggressive, loose at times, but I've tightened up my game recently.
Okay.
I definitely try to adjust to what the table is, but yeah, I'd say loose aggressive,
Loose aggressive.
tight aggressive,
Right.
just aggressive in general though.
Right.
I'm not afraid to bluff in the spots that I think a bluff's going to work. I'm not afraid to pull the trigger on a bluff, and that I feel is a mark a good poker player needs. Being able to pull the trigger.
Totally. What? So so you consistently play at the Blue Lake, but you've also played some of these bigger tournaments that you'll sign up for, and then you were saying the other day you left for a tournament at 2 a.m. from Humboldt, got there at noon, and then played for an insane amount of hours on no sleep. Which
what are you talking about?
I think you were talking about. Didn't you leave? You went to a poker tournament and you played on.
I think you're referring to Thunder Valley, which is in Sacramento.
Right.
So I played a tournament there. It was like a 325 buy-in deep stack, which means you just have a lot of chips.
Right.
I lost that. I ended up just playing the cash game 2-5, which means the blinds are $2 and $5.
Right.
Which is typical, $3 to $1,000 or $500 to $1,000 buy-ins.
Right.
And so I usually short buy for, say, I think it was $300 at the time. I ended up making, I don't know, like $400 on the table. I probably started around 10 o'clock, played till 1 o'clock in Thunder Valley in
Right.
Sacramento. Did the 6.5 hour drive to Humboldt. Got there, and then played throughout the night till about 5 or 6 in the morning, and had like one of my best nights.
Off of very little sleep.
Yeah, off of pretty much no sleep.
Pretty much no sleep. So tell me about that. When you're really vibing, when you're in the zone, are you? What's going through your head? How do you kind of jack into that mindset?
Well, you try not to use too much mental capacity on distractions or other things while you're just sitting there. You got to be very patient.
Right.
And so I've felt certain times when I get more tired, you kind of focus more in the game sometimes.
Right.
If you angle all your conscious awareness, whatever's left to the game, you kind of cut out the emotion. And that's what it really boils down to. If you know how to play the best poker you can, what gets in the way is typically emotions. Either you're mad or steaming off a hand, and that will affect your next hand, or you have, this ego against somebody else that you want to beat them in a hand.
Right.
Or you just got bluffed huge and you don't want to get bluffed again. A lot of it's emotional attachment. And the more you let go of that, the more pure poker you could play.
Right.
And so typically, sometimes when you're tired, you could play better. But obviously it goes the other way too. When you're just fatigued and you're not doing the right plays, and that's when you just need to leave.
Right.
But, yeah.
How do you know, George Washington was famous for knowing when to retreat. How do you know when you need to say, you know what?
Oh, man.
I need to call it.
Experience.
Okay.
Just straight up experience. I've been through the trenches of just not knowing when to leave.
Right.
Going broke, asking for people for loans that I know at Blue Lake, for instance. Trying to get it back.
While you're there.
While I'm there.
Okay.
Trying to get it back. I mean, sometimes it works, and that's why you do it again, right?
Oh, damn.
Because sometimes you get it all back and some, and then it's like, oh, next time I'm down, I'm just going to do that again.
Right.
So it takes a lot of experience of just being like, all right, I don't want to put myself in this position again, because sometimes you go broke, then you owe people money, all this stuff, and you just got to cut that out completely.
Right.
And just be comfortable enough with yourself to be like, okay, I'm not playing at my best. I can play tomorrow. There's always tomorrow.
Right.
The poker never ends, so there's always tomorrow. You could always walk away.
Right. How much of your memory, each hand, do you view each hand as completely independent from every other hand in that game, in the sense that you mentioned having an ego toward someone, oh, this guy beat me last hand, I need to go attack him this hand. Do you try to reset every hand and be like, I'm just going to focus on being the best I can at this hand?
That's generally what you should be doing.
Okay.
Obviously, it's hard to do that all the time, but I feel the best way that I've been doing is thinking of each hand individually, but thinking of the player with all the hand history. So It's a little bit of both. Like, you think, okay, I bluffed this guy 2 hands ago. He's probably more likely to call me now if he knew I was bluffing.
Right.
Now, if he didn't know I was bluffing and I keep making bets and he keeps folding, eventually he's going to crack and he's going to be like, I need to call this guy.
Right.
So, yeah, it's really, really just all about the player you're playing against and then the individual hand on top of that.
Right.
So you got to go through hand histories with whoever you're playing against, how they're feeling, kind of get an emotional read on them if they have that kind of thing. If they look uncomfortable, they look comfortable. If they look mad, if they look like they're fed up with what you're doing. You could definitely play off that, but generally you just want to, if you don't have any reads, then yeah, you want to stick to just playing each hand the best you can.
What percent of the game is emotional reading?
I'd say a lot. For me, a lot. A lot of the game. Percentage-wise, it can vary, probably up to like 70%, I'd say, is the top.
Really?
Yeah.
So you're saying there's some games, depending on the people you're playing with, where you're more concerned with what's going on their face than what's...
Not necessarily their face.
Okay.
The face is kind of like, stereotypical, like, oh, that's how you read somebody.
Right.
But it's really just feeling their vibe, their whole vibe, their hand history, like what they're doing in every single pot. Just watching how they are, how they're acting, their posture, if they're drinking alcohol, everything like that all plays. Their face is like one thing. But if they have a blank face the whole time, you can read them via how they play their hands.
Right.
And how they're folding their hands, if they're pissed off. Some people are just straight steamed and they just muck their hands, like throwing it on the table super hard and just mad.
Totally.
And then others are just very passive, and they're just patient, and they'll just wait till a good hand, and just to stay out of their way if they ever bet big.
Right.
So that's that's in a way a read too, like
right.
just knowing, like a guy in sweatpants in like a ripped shirt or something like is just more likely to just throw chips in the middle than a guy in a business suit and who's just been sitting there very patiently.
Right.
Like, so yeah, those
I
are
love
those
that.
are all reads.
How do you know when you need to bet big? How do you know?
It depends on what you want to accomplish. When I want to bet big to get somebody out of a pot, it's means that first of all they've seen me play only big pots that I've won, so that plays a big role. Is like you've been value betting, you're betting big to get paid a lot, and so you want to do a ratio of obviously betting depending on the table. Betting big when you have it most of the time and betting big when you have it less of the time. Okay. So it's very dependent. Like I'm going to say that for most of these questions about poker, it's all player. It's very player dependent. I'll do something against some guy that I'll never do to another guy. Right.
I love that. It's a very personal game, and I think online poker takes that out completely. No, I mean, well, although you mentioned you can read people's emotions by their hands alone, by how much they're betting.
Yes, that's the thing that you can get from online, right. But it's typically mathematical based, and the only variables you have is how much time that person has to act. So if they're doing certain things, they're taking certain amount of time to do certain things.
Right.
You can read them from that, and then obviously what hands are playing, what hands are not playing, how much they're betting. The betting sizes matter a lot. But besides that, people online usually try to play off of this thing called GTO or game theory optima.
Okay.
And that's the most optimal, quote unquote, way to play poker, which means it has the least amount of exploit holes in it.
Okay.
So you can't take advantage of it. So just an example would be playing rock, paper, scissors, right?
Right.
When you're playing rock, paper, scissors, you can pick rock, paper, scissors. You say you pick rock 3 times in a row, pick scissors 2 times, and then pick paper 5 times.
Okay.
That's just an uneven amount of distribution. And if you kept doing that and someone found out that you were doing that, they could exploit you
right.
by picking the exact opposite of what you're doing, right?
Right.
But if you were to pick rock, paper, and scissors all equal 33% of the time,
right,
then you would be playing in the most optimal way. You could not be exploited.
Got it. So an example, bringing this to poker, would that mean you would bet sometimes big on good hands and you bet sometimes big when you don't have?
Yes. Ideally, you want to have a bluff in almost every situation to balance. It's all about balancing your range, your hand range.
Right.
And that's game theory optima. And then the other is exploitative play, which most live players do, which, going back to the rock, paper, scissors theory, is, for example, is say, I know you, Richard, you like to do rock about 50% of the time for some reason. So I'm going to do scissors 50% of the time. I'm adjusting to you, so I'm exploiting you. Yeah, I could play game theory you could play optimal by I could just keep going 33% of the time, right. But I'm actually going to win more if I go off of what you're doing.
Right.
And so that's exploitative play. So you're going to make more money off somebody if you're playing off their weaknesses or their holes in their game versus just this completely balanced game.
Got it. And you'll typically start a game more balanced, and as you feel out the crew, or if like you said, you're familiar with certain players, you'll go into it knowing their strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah. I don't have a completely balanced strategy. I have somewhat of my strategy just varies a lot depending on my mood, but the starting point is where I adjust from. I try to start adjusting immediately from what I see at the table. Okay. And then I'll end up in a strategy that's more exploitative.
Right. What's the most you've ever lost on a coin toss?
What do you mean? just a pot, like
Yes. Yeah.
in one pot,
In one.
probably 1,800.
Woo! Damn. 1,800. Tell me about that. What happened? Relive it.
Well, I
bro.
was playing against this guy. I don't know if this is his real name, but they call him Lucky Lee.
They call him Lucky Lee.
And he played at the World Series. This is just word of mouth. He played at the World Series, made it deep in some bracelet event in Vegas.
Okay.
And he was a really good player, and he's not afraid to put money in the pot.
Right.
And so this 1-2 game up in Blue Lake.
What's 1-2?
$1, $2 innies.
Got it.
It plays more like a 2-3 or a 2-5 at times. Sometimes even a 5-10 late nights. Everyone's got at least $1,000 in front of them. Anyways, this Lucky Lee guy.
What's this guy look like?
Asian guy with sunglasses.
Okay, sunglasses.
Yeah. But the hand that he got me on, a previous hand is how he got my stack. He didn't get all 1,800 at once. It was within two hands, and they were kind of back to back.
Right. 1-2 punch by Lucky Lee.
Yeah, so I remember having 10 jack, right?
Okay.
And it was raised pre-flop, probably, 15 or 20.
And flop is which?
The flop is the first three cards
Okay,
that
so
come
it
out.
was raised before. Okay, so the stakes
Pre-flop, the stakes were raised.
Got it.
Lucky Lee called. Another guy called. Let's just call him Andrew.
Right.
And so the flop comes 7, 8, 9. And there's 2 spades on board. So I flop the nut straight. I have the absolute best hand possible on the board.
Right.
And
because you have 7, 8, 9, 10 jack.
Yeah.
Got it.
Absolute best hand.
Right.
And let's see what happens. I think Andrew bets out, say, 40.
Okay.
I raise him to 100. Lucky Lee calls 100.
Of course he does.
Andrew raises to, I think, 300. And he's got about 600 behind. And
600 behind, does that mean he has 600?
600 start. He had starting this. Let's say just starting the hand. He had 600.
Right. Got it.
So here's a 300. So he bets like half a stack.
Right.
And so I just
love
go
it. Half his stack.
Yeah.
I love that.
So I go all in.
Right.
For 18.
And this was only after the flop.
Yeah. So this is on the flop because I want to get the money in now. He's showing aggression. He's showing strength. Right. Because I raised him and he re-raised me.
Damn,
as far as Andrew.
This is the wild, brother. You're like a couple bears out there, a couple alpha males. He's showing strength, and you can see the female bears.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Jeez,
yeah.
It's dude. This is.
I like to call it the purest form of capitalism.
Woo!
It's eat or be eaten.
It's
but
eat or be eaten. Damn. Okay.
Anyways, I shove all in 1,800. I got both guys covered. Lucky Lee has about 700, right?
Okay.
Lucky Lee thinks for a while, and he knows that Andrew's going to shove the rest of his chips in. He knows he's shoving in the 300 extra.
So when you say you put in 1,800, you have them both covered, meaning you have more in the pot than they even have in their stack?
Yeah, I have the biggest stack that out of them two, which was Lucky Lee, who had 700. Andrew had 600 to start.
Right.
So the most I could lose was 700.
Got it. But you still put all your...
I just say all in, and then that just declares I have everyone covered. If they want to call me, they have to put all their chips in.
Got it.
So Lucky Lee thinks for a while, and he's like, okay, I think I'm gonna gamble because he thinks, at least this is my thought, that we don't have a flush draw right now. We have either the straight or a set or 2 pair or something like that.
Right.
And so he says, okay, let's gamble. And he shoves all in for 700.
Does he say that?
Yeah.
He says, let's gamble.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
And Andrew calls his remaining 300.
Andrew sounds like a punk. Is this guy a punk?
No.
Okay.
He's actually a good quiet guy. He's a quiet guy. He's a guy.
Okay.
He flops over. We just flipped it up since we were all in. You typically, you wait till the river or whatever.
So flipped it up meaning your cards, or you just showed your cards?
We exposed our cards, yeah.
Right.
Andrew shows pocket nines for top set.
Top set. I love all your lingo. What does top set mean?
Yeah, sorry. It's 3 of a kind with a pocket pair in your hand. So he has pocket nines in his hand, and then on the board he has a 9. So that's a set.
Is he winning at this point?
No, I'm winning.
You're winning.
I have the nuts. I have the best hand possible.
That's what you call it when you have the best hand. You call it the nuts.
The nuts.
Jeez. Okay.
And Lucky Lee shows like 5-2 of spades.
What?
He has a flush draw.
Because he's got 5, 6, 7.
No, just a flush, which means there's 2 spades on board.
Got it.
So he needs one more spade.
Okay.
And so the turn comes a blank. Has nothing to do with the hand. Say like an ace or something.
Sure.
And then the river comes a spade. Boom.
So he won.
He won.
Oh, shit.
So he won, knocked Andrew out, took 700 off my stack.
Right.
And I'd say like 2 hands later, I get pocket kings.
Oh, you're feeling good.
And there's a couple short stacks in there, which is about 100, 150.
Right.
There's a lot of raising pre-flop. Basically what happens is I raised to like 40. Someone raised it to like 15 or 20. I raised it to 40, 45.
Right.
And the short stack shoves for 100. And then the other short stack shove for like 150.
What does short stack mean, brother?
You just don't have a lot of chips.
Okay, got it. Okay.
Especially relative to the table, since Lucky Lee had like, what do you have? Like over $1,000.
Right. And
then I had 1,100.
Right.
And Lucky Lee had me covered at the time. So a lot of people had a lot of chips in front of them relative to the game.
Got it.
And so I re-raise to like 300 or 400. I think 300.
This is before the flop.
This is before the flop.
Okay.
I raised to like 300, I think. And Lucky Lee just calls me, flat calls, which means no raise. He calls me to 300. Flop comes, let's think. So it comes 4, 6, 3.
I love that you remember that. I love that.
And then I bet out again. And this time I bet like 400. I think I only bet like 300, which was a big mistake.
What? So at this point, you have 2 kings. You're hoping for a king, essentially?
No, I just want to take the pot down right now.
Got
I have 2 kings. He called me pre-flop for 300, so I'm assuming he has ace, king, queens, jacks, maybe.
Right.
Maybe 9-8 suited if he's risky, or I don't know.
Totally.
But it's Lucky Lee, so you never know.
I know. I love that.
So
right.
I bet 300, which, I kind of regret. I mean, I've learned from it, but
right.
I should have bet more, basically. Right. So he calls, which I kind of wanted to call.
Right.
But then the turn comes, the gin card for him, a 7. And I checked, and Lucky Lee just bets out like 500 or 600, I forgot.
And that's your money he's betting out right now. That he just
no, it's not my money.
Okay,
it's nobody's money until you're at the cashier getting the fucking.
I love that. So if those chips are on the fucking table, they are fair. It's no one's money. It's a free for all.
Yeah, you don't have that money.
You don't have that.
That's
money.
not your money.
You don't have that money until.
No.
I love that. Okay.
No, that's nobody's money.
I love that. Okay.
Until you take them off the table.
Right.
So yeah, he bets 500, let's say.
Right.
And I just go all in because I just don't believe he has the 5. Right. And this was kind of a little while back, but now that I look back on it, I don't know. He's not trying to get me off of aces or kings, and that's exactly what I'm representing. So he's just going for value. He's not bluffing me. Right. And for some reason, I thought he was trying to bluff me that he had the 5 and that he could actually sell it. Like, oh, I have a 5, like fold.
Right.
And I'm like, no, this guy's not getting me off my kings.
Right.
So I shipped it all in. He calls, of course.
course.
He has the 5.
Of course.
He had like 7-5 or something like that. And yeah, so he stacked me.
That's that 1-2 $1,800 punch.
Yeah.
Do you call it after that? And by call it, I mean leave the table.
Oh yeah. And at that time I had, I was more strapped for money than I am now. And I was just like devastated. I was sitting at the table, taking up a seat, not buying back in. And even the dealers were just like, all right, just let them soak that one in for a minute.
Wow. So
like usually they're just like, all right, are you buying in again or not? Right. But they're just like, let me alone. I was just like, oh my gosh.
Oh my God. I love that. So when someone, after that happens, do players typically, will Lucky Lee say, yeah, that's what you get? Or like, will there be chirping?
Oh, no way. They don't needle that hard. Needling means they're picking at you after the pain. They're trying to induce more pain. But no, people don't usually needle that hard unless there's some history going on or some, shit talk.
Right.
But yeah.
So everyone knows what you're going through and they just kind of let
Yeah,
you.
and then I didn't show the Kings either, so no one knew what I had. And so they're just like, what the hell just happened? That was like, it's all relative. Like, for instance, you play at Commerce and the bike and there's $2,000 pots all the time, right?
Right.
But at this game, it's up in Humboldt, smaller game, 1-2. Those kind of pots don't come around all that often.
Right.
Maybe like once a month, once every couple months.
I love that.
So it's like, they're just wondering, like, what the heck did I have? Even a guy asked me in the bathroom, he's like, dude, what'd you have? And I was like, I'll never tell that hand right there.
Oh my God. I love that.
Yeah.
Hold on. We're gonna I want to keep this going. We're gonna come right back to this. This guy's got to take a piss. Oh, hold on. I am breaking protocol. This guy's gonna go take a piss. We will be right back. I love it. Get over there, dude. Get over there. And we're back. That was hilarious. Fucking Justin's pointing behind me. He's like, dude, I thought someone was robbing the place or something. This guy just had to go to the bathroom. Okay, we are back. So I want to ask you a question, though.
What's up?
I love that. What Justin does, sits back in his chair. What's up? I'm back. I'm ready to talk. Bladder's empty. Let's do this. What's the most angry you've seen, or people at a table, and like get, in terms of how heated it's gotten?
Oh, I've seen people almost get in fights, or
really?
People that want to fight, and the pit bosses and whatnot, security guards come up, have to break it up. I've seen people get kicked out many times, being super drunk. Cross between just being super drunk and wanting to fight,
right?
Cussing people out. Yeah, like I said, there's a lot of ego that gets in that game.
Totally.
Yeah.
Has anyone tried to really try to needle you and try to do that to you?
They've tried. I mean, I haven't.
You haven't bitten.
No, I haven't. I've gotten into some scuffles on the table as far as like shit talk and whatnot, and I usually always try to take it out in the game. Like, I'm like, all right, well, let's play some poker then.
Right.
Like, that's why we're here. Let's take it out on the table.
Right. What's the most legendary game you've been a part of? I know you've played with. You were showing me the other day. There's this famous poker player. What's his name? You were on that YouTube video, which was pretty funny.
Oh, Jeff Gross.
Jeff Gross. So Jeff Gross is a famous poker player, and he has, I don't know, someone following him around with a camera or something. And Justin, this guy was being filmed. Jeff Gross is sitting at the table, was like talking or something, and you just see Justin. Justin kind of looks at the cameras like he just kind of glares for a bit and then just returns right to the poker. He's like, I'm at work right now. This is my job. Okay, I would get the camera out of my face. I love it.
That time I was that was in Reno at the Peppermill Casino, one of the nicest card rooms I've been to.
Right.
Me and one of the Blue Lake dealers, we drove throughout the night to get to this place to arrive at
so you're homies with one of the dealers and you're like...
I'm homies with a lot of the dealers.
Oh, well, first of all, we didn't really get into this, but when you walk into Kevin Lawless, Kevin Lettuce as we call him, actually high school cross country and track coach at Notre Dame High School back in the day, but he played poker with you. This was in Humboldt, and he said that you walk in, everyone knows you.
Yeah. I mean, I play there all the time.
I love
5 days a week at least.
Yeah, I play there all the time. I'm Jay Dunn.
Yeah.
So the pit boss knows you, the dealers know you.
Yeah, they all know me.
Does that feel? Tell me, how does that feel, dude? Does that feel good? That would make.
Yeah, it's just like going to work. Like everyone knows you.
Right.
Like some of the dealers I go play disc golf with,
Love that.
You know, the Zach guy, he and I talk strategy because he actually played poker online and stuff before he started dealing, and that kind of like took away his time to play some poker. But me and him headed out to a tournament out in the Peppermill, which Jason Somerville was hosting this event called Run It Up Reno.
Run It Up Reno. And
yeah, we made it out there. Drove throughout the night. It's about a 7-hour drive. Arrived right at 12 pretty much when the tournament started, and I was just dead. I was just dead tired, and I just didn't give a shit about any of what these people had to say or anything, because they're all just like, you know, they're all friends. There's a lot of pros there. They're all like starstruck about the pros and this and that.
You don't give a shit about.
And I was like, I just want to play some really good poker and just be a killer, you know. So I also sat next to Randy Nananoku, who's a online.
He just sounds famous.
Yeah, I mean Nananoku's his online name. He's like Randy. I forgot his real last name, but yeah, I'm sitting next to him too. He has the Poker Stars patch on and everything. I'm like, oh, so you're an online pro, huh?
Right.
Just like acting like I don't know who he is. Same with Jeff Gross. But yeah, that ended up being one of the toughest fields I've ever played in at the Peppermill. Just in any casino.
Right.
Which I learned a lot about how good you could actually play it at poker just from that field.
Right.
How aggressive people are, how good bluff hands, all that kind of stuff.
Now, at this level, is there less talking, more talking? Are people kind of needling each other more, or is the etiquette better, or is it just all across the board, even in the?
I think the etiquette was actually better at the Peppermill than typically. Yeah, the less serious they take poker, I feel like the more ego gets involved, like as far as like a career.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, because in the workplace, if you think of a corporate job, you can't be mouthing off to your coworkers or really telling them how you feel. But if you treat this as a job, if you treat this as, listen, I'm here to make some. I'm having fun, but I'm here to make some money, and I'm not going to freak out. I'm not in Vegas for the weekend with my friends. Just
exactly.
Right.
And so when it is something like, oh, just a weekend thing, or oh, I'm gonna go out golfing or play some poker with my buddies,
and you squeeze those people. They come to the table, you smell them from a mile away, and you squeeze them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Typically. So you're playing with these pros at the Peppermill, and you saw the way they played. And do you learn? How do you get better at your game? We haven't talked about this. Do you watch YouTube videos?
I watch videos all day, all the time.
Got it. So when you're not playing, before you go to
there's different kind of videos that I watch. There's anything from hand analysis to the math to live at the bike, which is just basically almost like a TV show, but they really get in depth about which hand should be playing here, which you should be bluffing here, kind of range merging, all this different different helpful tips and whatnot.
Totally.
So yeah, I watch all kinds of stuff. I watch a lot of Doug Polk, who's a newer player, I'd say, newish compared to like Phil Ivey and all those guys.
Right, all those guys. We all know those guys.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know who knows who. But
I know.
Yeah.
Right.
But Doug Polk is basically, he came up in the online scene, and he became one of the best heads-up players, if not the best heads-up player at a time in No Limit Hold'em, which means one-on-one.
Heads-up, one-on-one.
One-on-one.
Damn.
And he actually used to be a Warcraft player.
It's funny because when you said heads up one-on-one, I went straight to, damn, one-on-one in League of Legends, for example.
Yeah.
One-on-one is a completely different game than 5v5. It's almost like there's no compare. Is it like that in poker?
It is, except for there's no team when you're nine-handed either, so you're always on your own.
Right.
That's the difference, but as far as the play style and what you actually do with your cards, it's night and day. What you do, heads up, the math changes.
Right.
reading your opponent changes because you're focusing on each other and you know that that person is only playing against you.
Totally.
So all attention is on you.
Totally.
And you're paying, you're obviously paying attention to them. So bet sizing becomes more apparent of what you're trying to do. Whether
Right.
you're betting big, betting small, if
So,
you're inconsistent.
I want to share a little tidbit. I brought up League of Legends.
Yeah.
And I think this really, there have been bouts where you've gotten into chess. There's been bouts where you've gotten into, into farming. There's been bouts when you've gotten into video games. I mean, we played League of Legends together. So I think your style, when you get into something, you really get into it. And something I just want to kind of League of Legends, we've had some good times. There was one summer I like to talk about. And I always bring this up with Justin. I'm like, damn, dude, the good old days. I think this was the summer before my sophomore year. So maybe this was, 2012, 2013 or something like that. We would 3 or 4 dudes in your room. And it smelled horrible. I wouldn't shower. We would
the boiler room.
The boiler room, dude.
Yeah.
And we would just be playing. We would be playing all night. But something interesting. First of all, this guy's computer was old. He was a normal computer, or a good computer plays the game at 60 frames per second. So you can actually, see what the hell's going on. This guy's computer, 8 frames per second. Yet he was better than all of us. And the reason he was better, he did something that not many of us did. Many of us we would choose a character and we would play it a lot. We would kind of only play that character. But what Justin did was he would play all the characters because, and there's like a lot of them. There were 100 something, at least when we were playing. And by doing that, when he was facing that other character, because he had played them, he knew how to exploit them. And I think that is something that you've been, the way you approach things, which is why I think is such an awesome thing about you, is you approach things very, very holistically. You try to see every angle of the thing in order to do your best. Can you talk a little?
Yeah, I'd say that's pretty true.
Right.
That's definitely what I see is my advantage when I'm playing poker. Is I always try to put myself in that person's shoes, and I do. If you've seen me, if you were there with me at the poker table, you'd see I do the same thing. I've played so tight where I don't play any hands. I just basically, they call it nut peddling. You're just trying to get the best hand and only bet those hands.
Right.
I've sat there and done that for weeks on end. I've played super aggressive where I'm literally, every time I think that a person has a chance of folding or there's a chance to bluff, I'll take it.
So now, will you go into the game saying, I'm going to play this style because I want to practice playing this style? Is that how will you go into it, or you'll
it's just, I mean, I don't say that to myself, but that's just kind of naturally what happened is I tried to experience every single style.
Right.
I tried to experience how other people were playing, and I tried to play like them.
Right.
Or how they were playing, I tried to play the exact opposite of them. Or I would just try to play every hand, or I'd play no hands. I've tried every little thing, and I've lost and won with most strategies.
Right.
It's just winning more than you're losing, and you try to come up with that strategy in the end. And that's just my way of learning things.
Totally.
It's just sorting through all of it and seeing what is the best possible way, as opposed to finding something that works and sticking to it. Right.
Well, I think with that strategy, the sum is greater than the individual parts, right? I'm getting the quote wrong, but you know that expression. And when you learn all these different styles, I think about programming, for example. So I'm doing Android development, and I'm spending a lot of time on Android development. I do a little bit of other types of development, but I'm spending a lot of time on Android development. And something that, I think in everyone's life, when you start doing multiple things, they say that when you learn kind of many different types of talents and then fuse those together, that's where the real breakthroughs are. So I think there's a real lesson there for people, and that's that if you really want to do something special, sure, you got to be really good at kind of one thing, or in poker one play style. But as soon as you start kind of rounding out your skill set and then fusing those, it completely changes the game.
Oh yeah, because you could branch out, you could use that perspective that you originally had, and be able to break through walls that you're going down a narrow pathway and this is where it's leading, and then it's not working anymore. But if you're ready to break through a wall because you've been on the other side of that wall before, you've been in this other mindset, then it makes it a lot easier to do so. And you could be like, it's like going through a maze. You could just, choose different paths all at once. Not all at once, but you've experienced all the paths.
Right.
And you know where they lead. As opposed to just picking the right path all the way to the middle, you haven't experienced the maze fully, I feel like. I don't know.
Totally. And it can be scary to take, once you get comfortable in whether it's a poker play style, whether it's your job, whether it's the people you associate with, it's very easy to get comfortable and just kind of, I'm going to keep chilling on this because I'm comfortable with this. I'm not really going to branch out too much. I think it's really easy to do. So I think that you kind of have that mindset. I mean, it sounds stupid, but even in fucking League of Legends, like I wouldn't want to play other characters because learning hurts. Learning is hard. I'm going to suck with that character for a few games, and it hurts. And it's a horrible mindset.
Well, I mean, I feel like it's good because you get better at what you're doing, like, faster.
Right.
But for me, my thing is the exact opposite. I want something new. I love new things. I love learning new things.
Right.
And sticking to one thing has always been the hardest thing for me.
Right.
Sticking to one thing and just keep going and going with that. So switching characters for me was like playing League of Legends for the first time all over again.
Right.
And that was like the funnest part for me.
Right.
And so, you obviously get something out of it by learning every character, every weakness, all that stuff. But it's the same with poker. I switched my style, and that's the beauty of poker. You could always switch your style. I still do that. Not as extreme because I know what works and what doesn't. But my ideal, perfect way of playing poker is to constantly be changing, constantly adjusting, and just never being this solid player, I guess. I mean, you're just never this solid thing. You're like, like Bruce Lee said, be like water.
Be like water.
Be like water.
I love that. So you mentioned, kind of switching things up. How much longer do you think you're going to be on this poker grind? Because you've been doing this for a decent amount of time, and you mentioned you kind of jump around. Do you think this is something that you're going to be doing for the next few years, or where's your head at? Or you're not even thinking that far ahead?
I want to do this until I feel like I'm successful in it.
Okay. And
it has been a struggle staying on the same thing. I have switched to other things throughout, like, the whole weed industry.
Right.
Other things, just interests, stocks has been a huge thing, investing.
Right. Well, do you feel that stock trading has impacted your poker play, given that your relationship to money needs to be unemotional?
I feel like it's the other way around.
Okay.
I feel like my poker play has influenced my stock trading.
I love that.
Because I've put a lot more into poker than I have in stocks. And you can just get more experience playing poker by playing poker, as if you're just buying and selling stocks. Like, you're going to have to really, it's kind of like impersonal, like you're just doing it on a computer, whereas poker, you can go there live and have the whole atmosphere, and it's somewhere to go to separate yourself from everything else.
Right.
Or if you're sitting in your own living room trying to trade stocks, you can get, distracted.
Well, you've said to me, every hand you view as an investment. You look at the probability and you say, what's the upside? What's the downside? If the upside's worth it, even if you don't have a very good chance of winning, or maybe you have not a great chance, but if that upside is big, you'll go for it because the upside's so big.
Yeah, completely. Like, you could, just odds of the pot and everything like that. It's called implied odds, they call it in poker.
Okay.
But basically, not only what is in the pot, but what can be in the pot.
Right.
So the future, it's a future investment. So say if someone has pocket aces, right?
Yeah. First of all, how would you ever know that? Because
say there's this guy who sits there for 3 hours. He hasn't raised a single pot.
Right.
And this pot, all of a sudden, he raises huge, bigger than anyone else has ever raised.
Right.
What is he going to have most of the time? Pocket aces, pocket kings.
Right.
So he has aces.
Right.
But if you have a big enough stack, and he has a big enough stack,
right,
that if you can draw out on him, and say he's married to these pocket aces, he's never folding his aces ever. This is just like, a vacuum, let's say. And he's never folding his pocket aces. Right. You could profitably call with, say, 8-7 suited, even though you only have a 20% chance to win.
Right.
So on the surface, it looks like it's a bad call because you're calling with 20% chance. But if you hit, you can get his entire stack. So it's just a matter of how much he's betting versus how much he has left.
Right.
And so your implied odds is to win his whole stack if he never folds aces and you do hit your hand.
Right.
So, yeah, there's that definitely goes on.
I love that.
In more complex ways as opposed to just aces versus 8-7 suited.
Right.
Yeah.
So you mentioned you'll be doing poker until you feel you are successful at it. What's
here's my overall plan is that I play poker. I travel around, hopefully the world.
Right.
Macau is definitely on the top of my list. Gambling city in Asia.
Right. That's in Hong Kong.
It's a ferry away from Hong Kong.
Oh, right. It's
an island.
It's
I think.
Island,
yeah.
right? And this is bigger than Vegas, right?
Supposedly, yeah. I hear it's just huge. Like there's just so much money. Oh, you know how China's been growing rapidly.
Right.
All that money's just. I mean, not all that money, but that kind of a money.
Right.
Is going to Macau.
Totally.
And yeah. So I haven't hit up Vegas seriously yet. So that's still on my because I want to be able to play at a level that I want to play big enough that Vegas matters. Because if I'm playing it, a 2-5 or a 5-10 stakes, which is like $500 to $1,000 buy-in, and
what's
Vegas,
the point?
maybe in the $1,000 range, but up. But I want to play, a bit bigger stakes in Vegas,
right?
To actually make it meaningful, like Vegas worthy,
right?
But I want to travel around. Hopefully the world.
Right.
And if I do make enough money, invest in stocks.
Right.
Cryptocurrencies, that's a side note.
Oh, damn.
But
that's a separate podcast, brother.
Yeah, that's a separate podcast. Right. That's Richard's podcast. That's a reverse interview over here.
Damn, there we go.
But invest in properties. That's my main goal. Is to have some real estate going.
Right.
Some cash flow.
Right.
Yeah, and kind of do that thing.
I love that.
And poker will probably always be around, but yeah,
totally, dude. It's the world's oldest game or something, right? No, I just made that.
Well, I'm just saying, as far as my life goes, like I'm probably never gonna stop playing poker.
Right.
I mean, I did stop playing League of Legends because it wasn't making me money. But if League of Legends was making me money, I would be playing League of Legends still.
Damn. Well, hey, if you took it all the way, you might still you might have started making. No, but
I mean, I'm a gamer at heart, so that's that's what it is.
Poker's a game, brother. Poker's a game.
It is.
I love that. I wanna close out with what do you think has, because I think your worldview is very unique. I kind of opened with this, just in terms of you've always struck me as someone. Well, not struck me. You've always just been calm. I've never seen you really get angry, and I'm curious. Not only that, but you're also the way you think through things, and the way you let other people speak, and you'll kind of do this wait and see thing where you won't just rush to conclusions and do stuff like this. You kind of have that side to you, but you also have the side to you that's, I'm gonna do my own thing. I'm gonna do I'm gonna sell some jerky. I'm gonna help people grow some weed. I'm going to do poker full time. Where does this come from?
Well, just the first point you said about getting angry. I got angry as a kid.
Okay.
A lot, probably, a lot more than most people.
Got it.
So I was very angry at a young age. Oh yeah, I got my little brother knows about it. My family knows about it.
Oh, Sean.
I was very violent.
I did not know.
Young kid.
Right.
So I think I got it all out early, really.
Right. Well, when you were a young kid, you did martial arts, right?
Yeah. That probably didn't help, but
right.
Yeah, no, that got my competitive juices flowing.
Totally.
Traveling around the U.S., playing, doing karate tournaments.
Right.
But so yeah, I got a lot of anger out early on.
Right.
And then I kind of mellowed out around high school.
Why do you think you mellowed out?
Maybe it was because of weed.
Nice.
Maybe it was because I just hit puberty. I don't know.
Right.
I can't point at one single thing, but it just happened.
Right.
And then as far as like observing and the whole life outlook thing
Totally.
is, I would say, I just like to be right, first of all.
Okay.
I'm not going to, say like I'm some saint or something.
Right.
I like to be right, and I feel like I just don't want to be quick to jump into something that I don't know and make a huge mistake. I rather observe collectively, like absorb what it has to offer, and then make a decision or start speaking on something.
Right.
And I feel like that's just, patience married with listening,
Right.
and then acting upon that.
Totally.
I don't know. What was your second part of the question?
And the
again?
other part was just taking a different path.
Taking a different path. So my philosophy is that, like everybody, we're all going to die.
Right.
If you're not living the way you want to, you might as well die.
Right.
I mean, it's a pretty harsh philosophy, but if you think of it like that, like you just rather be dead, like death happens to everybody. It happens all the time around us, and everyone's going to die.
Right.
So if you're using your one, I'm not religious, so I don't believe in afterlife, but if you're not going anywhere after this is it. This is your one shot to do what you want. So for me, I want to do what I want and not what an employer wants, or not what, somebody living their own dream out.
Right.
I'm not going to work for their dream unless I want to get to that point.
Right.
And I'm not looking down on anyone who does work for anyone else, because you can accomplish great things in groups and all that stuff. I've just never been like a group worker, I've never been that type of guy. So
right. And that's what I love about you. Well, I notice people. I interviewed Chris Hogewarf on the podcast as well, and he actually quit his job to go all into music. And
oh wow.
Just you two as an example, and also just other very successful people. You guys are successful. I'm talking about also like, some really like, some, top level, very famous.
Steve Jobs.
Steve Jobs or CEOs. Well, I guess Steve Jobs is kind of a bad example because that guy would not be calm all the time. But there are some very successful people that are kind of living their dream, living their mission. And they have a very calm demeanor. They don't jump to, they don't let external factors kind of, affect them internally. They say they're just all about the process. They're gonna live their way, and if something bad happens, they're gonna route around it, and they're gonna use those obstacles and springboard off of them.
I feel like those two things go hand in hand. Like if you start going off the beaten path,
right,
you're gonna get beaten. You're gonna get beaten until you get your shit together and you kind of hold your own shit together. Because if someone's always telling you what to do, then you're always going down their path. You're always going down the clear-cut way that's already been experienced, and you can act however you want going down the path as long as you go down it. But if you're making your own path, then you're gonna come up against a lot of walls, a lot of brush, a lot of stuff that could hurt, will hurt for sure, and you end up coming out being like, okay, I don't want to be too quick to jump into something that's gonna, hurt again.
Right.
So,
right.
It definitely humbles you.
Totally. J.D. Rockefeller, the one of the richest people of all time. One of the things he said I heard recently was that when he was first starting his career, there was a very big economic crisis, and a lot of people lost hope. A lot of people left. And he looked back at that experience early on in his career, and he said, wow, I was so blessed to experience such hardship at that time, because, like you said, you go off the beaten path, or you experience something that's hard. You experience walls. You experience brush. That stuff does make you stronger.
It does, for sure.
Totally. And
because if you don't experience it, then what do you have to guide you?
Right.
Somebody else. Like if you're not experiencing it on your own,
right.
Or if you are experiencing it with groups, and if you're all taking that brush, then yeah. But generally, if you're just kind of going with the herd and you're never experiencing anything on your own, then you're never gonna have anything else to compare it to. So you always think what you're doing is right.
Totally. Well, Justin, I really appreciate you stopping by Oakland. We're hitting up First Friday. We're gonna hit up some Hood Slam tomorrow. We'll have a good time doing that. Locals know what that is. If you don't, Google it. So thank you so much. Stop by the office, coming in and riffing. I really appreciate you taking the time. This has been awesome. Dude.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me on, Rich.
Dude, of course. And
I always appreciate a good conversation.
I love it, dude. And we got this one on tape, and I love it.
Oh,
I
yeah.
love it. Okay, brother. Best of luck with the poker.
All right, yeah.
And keep doing your thing, brother. Keep doing it.
Thanks.
I love it. I'll be keeping tabs on you.
Alrighty.